Pelican just recently released their new record called Flickering Resonance, which is out now on Run for Cover Records.
So that was sort of our first dabbling back into recording with each other as four-piece, which we hadn't done in, about 10 years. But, it was our lives. We toured all the time. We were just all in, like the thing that you never think you're going to get to do. When you get to do it, it's pretty magical and awesome and very fulfilling. And I started bartending at this place called Big Star. I've been there for 15 years. And, in some ways, like it, silly as it may be to say, I think a lot of musicians end up back into that life or working night jobs and stuff because some of it just feels eerily similar, and maybe
Right.
checks off some of those community boxes in general. And then COVID hit, and COVID for me was like a real sort of like reckoning with what was missing in my life. I think in general, age mellows you out and gives you a little bit of wisdom. Life years behind you gives you the gift of hindsight, and you can be like, okay, well, I handled this poorly, or could have done this differently, or whatever. I got this idea. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's cool. No big deal. I think we're a lot more free in that regard of wanting for things to sound a particular way. You can't wait for it to come out, and then once it's out, you're like, oh, I wish it could come out again.
I mean, the record just feels massive and layered.
Like just really the beginning of all the stonery doom stuff. Less so kind of like, the classic doomy things like Cathedral and Saint Vitus or whatever, which I like sort of knew, but at the time wasn't like super tuned in on. And on like songs like Strung Up from the Sky and Inch Above Sand, those are all like bass driven songs that he brought to the fold and, sort of were built around some of his ideas. Everybody's got a quarter of the pie and we all speak as loudly as each other. There's less of a dominant vision. It's easy. It's fun when you get a really driving bass line because then you can kind of spin, around it, go in and out, and that the anchor is there and it's driving the song along. Just the little waves of sound. But now I'm like, I don't care, man. I'm just happy to be around doing this. We've already started on. We've got a couple songs that we started that are fleshed out guitar wise, are completely fleshed out. There's one that we actually have coming out at the end of the year on an EP, which we haven't announced yet. I'm super stoked, to be honest. And I'm really feeling excited about just this sort of like melting pot moment we're having where I feel like we could just pretty much kind of bring any influence to this at this point. Let's just
Yeah.
do what's feeling natural.
Yeah.
So if I'm starting to write with everything on, all I'm going to write is these barn burning fucking
Yeah.
heavy songs, So if I start clean, I'm like, I'm just listening to myself a lot more. Everything now is really informed by being on stage too, because we wrote a lot of songs earlier on that I don't want to say are not fun to play live, but to us like just don't translate as well in terms of the place we want to get to in our own heads. You don't want to be on stage 5 weeks out of the year and have it feel like a chore. I would say they are, like a postcard, or the record's a postcard of a time and place, right? It's funny how once it's attached to the song, though, you're like, well, I could never call it anything else. It's one of the last true feelings of connecting to earth.
Right.
So that's for sure a theme that shows up in the music. You could tell we're very landscape based. We once, in being an instrumental band, you almost set yourself up for, you're going to have a limited audience. You write 10-minute songs, you're not, there's no hit single coming out of that or whatever. And for that to be relatable to others, that's the gift, right? And if it wasn't, as long as we were honest with each other, then we could be in our own minds, the world's greatest local bar band with the same 20 people that come out. But I think that's the beauty of it. It starts with us and a moment of connection with the audience, big or small, and that's really that's the crux of it. I think we are definitely aware that compositionally we are not tethered to any sort of like classic formula for songwriting. Yeah, it might be fun to do the super unknown trick, where every song is in a different tuning. And that does really lend each of the songs on that record exist in the songs. If they were in E standard, they would sound like we were trying to play like, Riot Fest or something. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some hooky poppy stuff in there. It's a combo of an SG with the Model T, and he uses an Earthquaker. I think it's Palisades. I can't remember the one. I think it's Palisades. It's like a three-channel distortion, three clipping options. It has a light clipping, heavier, and then like a boost on it or whatever.
Right on,
And
yeah.
it sounds great. I think between the two of us, we kind of wrap we wrap up all the sonic frequencies. I want clarity to still be there. Like I want it to be heavy, but I want people to pick up on the nuance and the dynamics. The only advice I've ever been given is when you're recording, just dig in.
Right.
Dig in and I like obsessively dig in because otherwise things will just sound a little muted.
Right.
But otherwise, man, it's honestly just rocking in the studio. You
Yeah.
know, there's not too many, yeah, there's reverb, there's delay, there's a couple of other little Easter eggs in there, but there isn't like a ton of modulation, to be honest. It's probably the jammiest one, like where it sounds kind of like a jam.
Yeah.
And I think if anything was going to be an entry point back into being a band together, this would be the record that I would want it to be.
I want to hear about the new label, at least for you guys, Run for
Oh,
Cover.
yeah.
A label that's known for more, I guess, more indie and emo type.
Yep. If you're going to be a band 20 years in and you had like the world give you a pause and you're back, it might be interesting to not wear the same shoes and just try something different. I'm not super enthusiastic about the future of the music business.
Like the next band I'm in, I just want some enthusiasm around it.
Yeah.
I think you got a Debbie Downer around you. It's not inspiring for music, especially, but art and
Not when you're 47. It's the first time you like venture out from your little Midwest hub,
Yeah.
So some of the earlier shows were like, yeah, we're in Ohio, like we're out there. Like the van made it further than 3 hours, So
your adventure, rock and roll there.
So touring and getting the word out was still pretty raw, certainly by today's standards, where you can pretty much announce a show and the entire world knows about it in 2 seconds. Playing in LA for the first time or San Francisco, playing Bottom of the Hill, stuff like that, where you're like somebody out on the coast is aware of my band and coming to the show. Those are really impactful, like first moments, If anybody got into us for that record and then put on City of Echoes, they're probably like, what the hell just happened?
Hey man, come on. Quit neglecting Cleveland.
But we wouldn't do it if we didn't love it, like endurance with us and for us. Because if you go see a band you haven't seen in 8 years and they're playing all new stuff, you might be like, oh man, come on, I want to hear my faves. But the shows went over well. It's a whole layer of engagement with the crowd when they know the songs that you don't get otherwise.